Well, so welcome to Red Deer Public Library's Travel Memories program. First one that we're doing online. And Donna Stewart and my name's Priscilla McLaughlin, started this program in September 2013. So we just had a few people sitting around a table talking about their trip, and now we're in our 8th season. But this is our first time online. This program's success is because of our loyal audience members and speakers, particularly travelers willing to organize their pictures and their stories and share them with us. And that's what's made this program so successful. Today, we're looking forward to Debbie Olsen giving us started virtually. If you attended last January's in-person program, you'll remember she presented on 4 amazing trips for wildlife lovers, and it was a real hit. If you weren't there, but you recognize her name, she was a travel writer for the Red Deer Advocate for many years and still has a travel column with the Calgary Herald. And she also has published some books. And one of them that I have here, even though it'll show, the title will show backwards, it's still a beautiful looking book. And you have the opportunity to win this book. So at the end of Debbie's talk, we'll have a skill testing question. And if you have the answer, you can respond in the comments section, or you can send me an email before next Wednesday, October 14th at 5 p.m. And we'll do a draw and you can win that book. So something to better be paying attention. So today, Debbie's joining us from Banff, where she's busy working and updating a photo's guide with national park information, I think. So she's getting to eat in lots of interesting places and stay at lots of interesting hotels. And she's now going to be the expert on all that. But she's very busy, so we're really lucky that she's got some time to spend with us today. I should say the book is called, pardon me, 150 Nature Hotspots in Canada, selected and edited by Debbie Olsen. It's a prize. And one note, I just want to mention that next month's talk on November 4th will be Anita and Jane, and they'll be back for their 3rd time, and they're going to talk about their hike in the Great Glenway in Scotland. So that's another experience you won't want to miss. So now I'm going to pass the hosting duties to Debbie, I hope.
Okay, just wanted to thank the Red Deer Public Library for asking me to do this presentation, and thank you to all of you for joining me today. I'm excited to talk to you about the Yukon, actually. So I did recently published, it came out this summer, a book about Canada's nature hotspots, and the Yukon is in there. I traveled to the Yukon in the summer of 2018 and in the winter of 2019. So this was a recent trip. The pictures you're gonna see from the summer trip are all my own, and from the winter trip, a lot of them are my husband Greg's. He traveled with me in the winter. So anyways, the Yukon is a place that I really love. But one of the things that I think of, well, actually, I guess I put in a slide about me. I know that a lot of you know who I am, but I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me. One thing you might not know is that I'm Métis. And avid hiker and nature lover. Hence, I've written 2 different books about nature hotspots in Canada. I'm the mom to 4 grown-up children and grandma to 3.5. Number 4 is coming in November, so I'm super excited about that. As Priscilla mentioned, I've contributed to 10 Photo's guidebooks, and I'm here in actually the Post Hotel right now in their library, giving you this presentation because I'm researching guidebook number 11 for Photo's. It's called Photo's National Parks of the West, and it'll come out in the spring of 2021. Let's see what else. Oh, been involved with the trails community for a long time. I was president of the Central Alberta Regional Trails Society, and really proud of the fact that we worked hard to build a trail between Red Deer and Lacombe during my time there. And if you haven't had a chance to go out on that trail, highly recommend that you did. And here's another little fact that you might not know about me. I actually have a science degree. I worked for 17 years in a level 2 microbiology lab and did a lot of molecular genetics and whatnot. And in high school, my best marks were English and chemistry. And I figured I couldn't make a living as a writer in all likelihood. So I did the sensible thing and I did a science degree. Worked in science for a long time and I loved it. But when I started writing again, it was like finding a piece of myself that I had left behind. So I've enjoyed doing the writing for over 20 years now and really had a lot of fun doing it. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about some of the adventures I had while researching the 2 Nature Hotspots books. These are adventures that I had so that you will not have to have them. I went across bumpy logging roads. I got a flat tire on an unmapped gravel side road with my mobility challenged aunt in the vehicle, and there we were. That's why there's a whole paragraph dedicated to Ted Mandel in the first book. He's the farmer who came by and changed my tire. I got locked out on this recent book. I got locked out of my cabin in Kuchibujwak National Park in the middle of the night, and there is a mention of the person who came and saved me from sleeping in my car overnight. A bunch of other things. Took night photos in a dark sky preserved by myself, hiked through the woods alone, got lost a few times. Anyways, there are really great directions in the new books so that hopefully you don't get lost when you're trying to find some of these places. Anyways, let's move on and talk about the Yukon. So I don't know about anybody else, but for me, when I think about the Yukon, I think about the Klondike Gold Rush. This is a picture that was in a museum that I visited of what a gold rush stampeder might have looked like back in the day. And these are some historical photos from the Klondike Gold Rush. It lasted for such a short time, but it really left an indelible print upon the culture and the place that we know as the Yukon. Here's a few facts about the Klondike Gold Rush that I thought might be of interest to you. So gold was discovered along Bonanza Creek, which is a tributary of the Klondike River, on August 16, 1896. And it was the largest gold strike in Canadian history, remains the largest gold strike in Canadian history. And the news of this gold strike really had a huge impact in the US because they were suffering from a huge recession, and people were in a panic. Actually, they didn't trust the banks anymore, and so the thought of gold, just being able to get rich with gold, really appealed. And so over 100,000 miners made the trip to the Yukon to seek their fortunes. So it was like a lot of ordinary people. They just heard about it and thought, I'm going to do this thing. In fact, I understand the mayor of Seattle resigned as mayor just so he could go up to the Yukon and look for gold. There were 2 main trails that got you to the gold fields. And one was called the Chilkoot Trail, and it was out of Dia. And the other one was the White Pass Trail out of Skagway. But either way, this was no easy journey. There were all kinds of danger. A lot of people died or suffered along the way. You know, everything from hypothermia to disease to avalanches, people drowned. Gold prospectors would pack their supplies over the Coast Mountains from the 2 ports to a place called Bennett, BC. And then they'd build or purchase rafts to take them down the Yukon River to the gold fields that were in Dawson City. Now, one of the things that the Canadian government didn't want to see happen, they didn't want to have all of these US citizens up in our Canadian Yukon with no food. So they mandated that anybody who was going to make this journey had to bring a year's supply of food, plus there was a whole list of supplies that they had to bring. And what this meant is that the stampeders, they would have to carry it over the mountains themselves. And sometimes it was 20 or 30 trips over the White Pass, or the Chilkoot Pass, as the case may be. Boom towns like Dawson City, Yukon, sprang up quickly due to the influx of miners. There were saloons and gambling. It was a wild, wild place. In the end, only a few hundred people actually got really rich from finding gold during this time. But it was one of those places that is forever is considered a place rich in adventure. So moving on. If you're going in the summertime, I think you have to explore these Klondike historical places. So one of your first stops should be Dawson City. Now, Dawson City today has a population of about 1,400 people. And you'll notice that this street here is gravel. And the reason is it's so far up north that they can't pave the streets. They have to stay gravel because of the freeze-thaw effect that happens up there. So it's a little city with gravel streets through the whole town. If you go there, I highly recommend you do a Dawson City walking tour, because they dress in historical costume, but they take you to all of the buildings and the restored buildings especially, and you learn a lot about the Klondike history when you're touring these buildings. They're fascinating to see. And when you're walking through Dawson, you're gonna see beautifully restored buildings like this one, the Westminster Hotel, that's been there since 1898. And you'll see buildings that are abandoned, like this one. It's probably about the same age, but it's just sitting there empty. You'll see cute little houses that are all fixed up that date back to the era. And then you'll see buildings like this one that tilt sideways. It's just a fascinating place to walk around. There's the Red Feather Saloon, which has been there for a long time. And I happened to visit on my first trip in the summer to Dawson. I went during Dawson City Discovery Days. It's an annual festival. Of course, it didn't happen this last year because of COVID, but they hold their annual big city festival, their parade. This is a picture of someone in the parade throwing some candy, in conjunction with the same time that the gold was discovered in Dawson. So August was the time. So mid-August every year, you can come and see the Dawson City Parade and attend all the other events. The place is so small that the parade travels around the town twice. So if you miss seeing something the first time, you could see it on the second time around. This was interesting, and it happened while I was there. So someone had been renovating one of the older buildings in Dawson, and they found this safe in the basement of the building. It was locked, and nobody knew what the combination was or had a key for it. And so it had been there since the gold rush times, and people speculated, could there be gold in this safe? And so the entire town gathered around, and news crews came from all over the place because they decided what they were going to do is they were going to open it at Dawson City Days. So right after the parade, we all headed to this park, and we sat there and we watched them open to the safe. And even though there might have been gold in there, yeah, there was actually nothing in there. So the safe was completely empty, but it was kind of exciting. There was it could be gold. Let's see what else. I think if you go, you have to visit Diamond Tooth Gertie's Gambling Hall. They still have the dancers there like they would have back in the day. The business itself was actually named after Gertie Lovejoy, and she was one of the most famous of Dawson City's dance hall queens during the gold rush era. She got her nickname because she put a diamond right between her front two teeth. And interestingly, this is just a side note, Gertie married, ended up with a respectable life. She married the local town lawyer, and yeah, she became Diamond Tooth Gertie, but respectable Diamond Tooth Gertie. anyways, oh, here's something else that you can do in Dawson. I must admit, I did not do this, but over 100,000 people have done this. So the Sourdough Saloon has something called the Sourdough Cocktail Club. It was established in 1973, and that is a real human toe that you're seeing in the bottom of that glass there. And actually, people are in line to donate their toes to this cause. And if you have this drink, you become a member of the Sourdough Cocktail Club. And the rule is you can drink it fast, you can drink it slow, but your lips have got to touch the toe. And I must tell you, if you swallow the toe, the fine is like, it's tens of thousands of dollars. I can't remember. So the thought of swallowing the toe is really disgusting, but apparently it has happened. So they've established a big fine for swallowing the toe. So anyway, that is something you can do if you want to. I decided to forego myself, but each his own. Another thing that I really enjoyed, and I think that most people miss in Dawson City, is a hike to visit the graveyards. You don't have to visit the graveyards on the 9th Avenue Trail, but it's just a pretty view above Dawson. But I thought visiting the graveyards was fascinating. I'll just show you what I saw. So there's several different graveyards, and they have this little booth set up in there, and someone has gone to the trouble of writing about each of the different graves that are in there, and you learn a little bit about the life of the different people that were there during the gold rush era and how they died. And some of the people are more recent burials, because people came up to the gold rush and then they never left. They lived there till they were 90. So anyway, you learn about their life and their experiences, and I thought it was just fascinating. Best graveyard, I'm sorry, but I think graveyards are interesting to visit. I do. And this was one of the better ones I've visited anywhere. So yeah, there's different, it's interesting to walk around and look at the tombstones. It's interesting to read about the people that are there. They have a Jewish graveyard, a separate Jewish graveyard there in the Klondike. And this one was my favorite of the bunch. This is the Northwest Mounted Police Graveyard. And if you look at these tombstones, look at the age of these young men. And there's so many of them that came up there, and they died during the gold rush trying to keep the peace in this crazy, crazy time. When you read the book, it tells, different ways that they passed away. Some people died on the trip up, some died, trying to keep the peace. It's an interesting thing. I also think they have something called the Klondike Spirit. It's a paddle wheeler that operates out of Dawson City there. And I took a ride on the Klondike Spirit. So many people traveled by paddle wheeler back in those days. Some information about it there. So passengers would travel from Whitehorse to Dawson City via paddle wheeler. At one time, there were 23 paddle wheelers on the upper river. So a lot of people made their way to the Yukon this way. Or at least that was part of their journey. Now, it's really, if you ride on the paddle wheeler, there's a lot of beautiful scenery outside of Dawson City that you can see. But one thing that is interesting is you're going to pass the home, and I use home, of Caveman Bill Donaldson. He's been living in a cave above the Yukon River for almost 20 years, just outside of Dawson City. And he gets free Wi-Fi over at the library. So just a little note to that. The guy has, I think he has close to 500 Facebook followers, actually. So he lives without electricity. He, just lives the cave life. There's a lot of interesting characters in the Yukon. He's just one of them. Oh, another thing that I did. So this was in mid-August, and you can start seeing northern lights in this part of Canada around August. And there's a place above Dawson City, and I recommend that you go there during the day, but go back again at night, which is what I did. So it's called the Midnight Dome, and it's this hillside that overlooks Dawson City. So I went there one night and just waited to see if the northern lights would come out. And I sat up there and sat up there. It was getting colder and colder, and then turned around, and it turns out I was looking the wrong direction. They were right behind me, and they were beautiful. So I'll show you a few pictures of those. You can just watch them bounce across the sky. I love that. If you want to see the northern lights, the peak time to see them is in winter. So that's part of the reason I wanted to go back a second time. Next, from there, I went over to a place called Carcrass, Yukon. And on my way there, there's a place called the Carcrass Desert. They say that it's the world's smallest desert. It's actually about 640 acres, and technically speaking, it's not really a desert. It's more of a series of northern sand dunes, but it's a really pretty place to take photographs. And it's an interesting land formation, I thought. So I included a couple of pictures so you could see what that was like. And then I went over to Carcrass, Yukon. The current population of Carcrass, Yukon is 300. There's 300 people that live there, but the big attraction, well, besides mountain biking, apparently there's some really great mountain biking in the area, is it's the site of a train station for the White Pass and Yukon Route train. It's also home to the Tagish First Nation, and the former name of this place was called Caribou Crossing. And what's interesting about it, it was called Caribou Crossing because there were so many caribou here. But when all the Klondike stampeders came up, they killed all the caribou, you know? So just decimated the caribou population for the First Nations who lived there. So they've been working to bring that caribou population back. But if you wander through the town, there's some fantastic Indigenous art and totem poles, beautiful murals all over the place. So I wandered around and looked at, these are just a few of the photos, to be honest. Wandered around and looked at the art, read the interpretive panels, and enjoyed that while I waited to catch the White Pass and Yukon Route historic train. So I mentioned that in 1896 and 1897, when people came, they would hike over the mountains. Sometimes the routes were pretty rugged. Sometimes they'd have pack animals, but most of the time they were carrying their gear by themselves, and it would involve multiple trips. But because this was such in demand, this route, construction of the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad began on May 27th, 1898. The route would stretch from, Skagway, Alaska into Carcrass, Yukon. And the railway was completed on July 29th, 1900. Now, Carcrass didn't used to, like I said, this was just First Nations land. There wasn't a huge settlement there, but it became a bigger settlement at that point because people would then catch the train from Skagway all the way to Carcrass, and this eliminated the difficult passage that they had to make on foot. And today, the train is still operating. A lot of people who go on cruises to Skagway and have stops in Skagway, Alaska, it's often offered as one of the tours that you can do. But if you visit the Yukon, you can do it the other direction. You can go from Carcrass all the way to Skagway. In my case, we had someone pick us up before we crossed the US border. So just inside, we just went one direction. And it's kind of interesting being on the train. There's beautiful scenery all along the route, and the windows are nice and big so you can look out. They feature a really nice meal on there too. This is just, it is 67.5 miles from Carcrass to Skagway by train, and it takes a long time to get there. But it's, these days, it's a scenic journey, so nobody complains. You can stand out on the back of the train and just take pictures, and that's a fellow taking a picture of Lake Bennett. they always make a stop in Bennett. There's another station in Bennett, BC, and they will make a stop there. Oh, and all of the staff dress in historic attire, so it's really fun. So the Bennett Rail Station today is only accessible by train or on foot. And it's a fascinating place to explore. St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church is there. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's the only building that is still standing in the town of Bennett. So Bennett, BC is really a gold rush town. It didn't exist before the gold rush. As I mentioned, people would be going up over the mountains, carrying their gear, and they'd need to stop, you know, in a place before to store the gear and then go back and make another run and make another run. And so at one point, well, Bennett was the place. And at one point there were about 6,000 residents in Bennett, BC. And this church was built in 1899 to serve the needs of the gold seekers on their way to the Klondike. Okay, I found this tidbit. You'll see it at the first Trump Hotel, question mark. I found this tidbit on Wikipedia. I know that we can't always trust Wikipedia, but I thought it was funny and needed to be shared with you. So one of the establishments in Bennett was called the Arctic Hotel, and it was a combination saloon, restaurant, and hotel set up by Friedrich, otherwise known as Fred, Trump, who was the grandfather of Donald Trump, and his partner, Ernest Levin. And the establishment included a brothel. It apparently included a brothel. And what really amuses me about it is that Donald Trump to this day says that was totally false, that there was never a brothel there. But anyway, that it should really matter this far out, I don't know, but I found the whole thing amusing. So what happened to Bennett? Like I said, during the peak of the Klondike stampede, Bennett had almost 6,000 residents. But when the railway was built, there was no longer a need for people to come over the mountains on foot and stay in Bennett. So basically the town died. And that's when Carcrass became the place where people now congregated, and it became the bigger population. If you stop, when you stop at Bennett on the train, you can also take some steps on the Chilkoot Trail, which is, for those stampeders that did the Chilkoot route, it's like walking in history. It's one of the National Historic Sites of Canada. And it's, you know, what would happen is they'd come as far as Bennett, and then they would build rafts. Once they got all their gear there, they'd build rafts and float across the river and make their way down to Dawson City. Now, this is not in Carcrass anymore. We are now on the Yukon River, and there, you may have heard of the famous Five Finger Rapid. It's actually mentioned in Jack London's Call of the Wild book, but the Five Finger Rapids was one of the most dangerous places that the stampeders had to pass through. There's 5 different passageways that they could take, but only one of them was safe. And so anyways, today there you can stop right along the highway, and there's a beautiful walkway that will take you down, and you can stand right above the rapids and look at this piece of Klondike history. As it turned out, when steamboat paddlers would come through here, there were a few that crashed here, by the way, but they learned how to winch themselves up to one of the rocks and then slowly pull themselves through the channel safely. So, oh, some facts about Five Finger Rapid. Let's see if what I haven't told you. Yeah, thousands of gold rushers would navigate their homemade boats and rafts 1,300 kilometers. Imagine that, from Bennett Lake to Dawson City. This was one of the major obstacles, and then I talked about that. It took about 15 to 20 minutes for a stern wheeler to make its way through, and that was if they were able to winch themselves up and slowly edge through the outside of the channel, through the 5th channel. Okay, I think that's it for my Klondike history thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I also thought I'd talk a little bit about two of the parks that appear in the book, 150 Nature Hotspots in Canada, two of the Yukon parks. So one of them is called Tombstone Territorial Park. It's about 90 minutes outside of Dawson City, and it's on the Dempster Highway. Now, the Dempster Highway is a gravel highway, and it's really rough and rugged. They say you've got to have plenty of food, gas, and a couple of spare tires, and you need to know how to change those tires if you're going to go out on this road. Make sure your car is in tip-top shape before you leave. Partway along the way, and I visited this, but I didn't have a picture of it, is the Tombstone Interpretive Center. It's open from late May to September, and when you stop there, it's the only flush toilets you're gonna find on the whole route. And they also have, inside the Interpretive Center, there's a lot of interesting displays about the wildlife that you can encounter in the park, and the different flora and fauna in general. Also, the park rangers can help you with discussing places where you might go hiking and such. So Tombstone Territorial Park is about 2,200 square kilometers in size. It's protecting a lot of rugged territory, and there's a lot of wildlife that lives here. There's only one campground that can be reached by car, and there's 3 backcountry campgrounds. That's it in 2,200 kilometers. And there's a few hiking trails that are actually set out. Otherwise, you're just gonna bushwhack your way through. These are some of the views that the pictures I took as I was traveling along the Dempster Highway. It's such an epic road that it has its own website. And someday, I traveled for a few hours on the Dempster, but someday I would love to go back and travel there. It's 740 kilometers from Dawson City all the way to Inuvik. And then from there, you can take the new all-weather road to Tuktoyaktuk and dip your toes in the Arctic Ocean. This is a dream I have. I would like to do this journey sometime. Just haven't had the chance to do it yet. I have no idea for sure. I call this Arctic fluff, but it lines the kind of the ditches and roadsides, and I just thought they were really pretty, so I decided to show you it, even though I don't know what the technical scientific name is for this stuff. One of the things that I did in Tombstone that I really enjoyed is went for a horseback ride trip. There's a company called Tombstone Outfitters. So you head down the Dempster Highway there. You can stop at the Interpretive Center. And if you keep going just a little ways further, you'll come to Tombstone Outfitters. And they offer hunting trips on horseback, but they also offer day rides and hourly rides that will take you into the park. This is just our little group heading out into Tombstone. What I liked about we did maybe a half-day ride or something like that, several hours anyway. Nice thing about doing it on horseback is you can cover a lot more territory, and because you're traveling where there are no hiking trails, you can get back and see some of the interior of the park, or a little touch of it anyways. This is another rider that was on the trip. I took a picture of him while he was going along, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the riding, and the horses were really really good to work with. Well, if people hunt from their backs, you can imagine they're fairly steady. A lot of one of the big wildlife species that you might see would be Dall sheep. They look a little bit like the bighorn sheep, but they have more of a curly horn than the bighorn. Unfortunately, I didn't see any of those, but I was sure looking hard. Okay, the other national park that I put in the book, 150 Nature's Hotspots in Canada, is Kluane National Park. And this is a picture of the lake at Kluane. I just thought it was so pretty. Here's some interesting information about Kluane. It's also at just over 22,000 square kilometers, so it's huge. And it's home to Canada's highest peak, which is Mount Logan. And that Mount Logan is also the second highest peak in North America. It's also home to the largest ice field in Canada and to North America's most genetically diverse grizzly population. This other fact I think is interesting too. Kluane is home to 17 of Canada's 20 tallest mountains. Roads don't run through the park. There's the Haines and Alaska highways run along the northeastern edge and of the park and the adjoining Kluane Wildlife Sanctuary. So, you know, your only way to get into the interior of this park is to bushwhack your way in, you know, just to hike in there, or you can do what I did, which is take a flyover trip, which I loved. I highly recommend you do it both in summer and in winter, and I'm going to show you pictures of both. So this is what it looks like as you're flying over these massive mountains in Kluane National Park. Here it is again. And you can see the gray down there is a big glacier, and it's partly the little lines that you're seeing through there are, you know, the streams as the glacier's melting a bit in the summer. When you get to the tallest peaks though in Kluane National Park, those remain snow-covered year-round, and you can kind of see them in the background of this shot. You can start to see the snow, but yeah, and as you get to higher elevation, it's snowy regardless of whether you're there in winter or summer. This is okay. So here's what it looks like in summer in this region. It's the same shot, different elevation perhaps in winter. This is kind of airplane that you take. It's a little, I don't know, two-seater. There were two of us and the pilot in there when we traveled there. I got a picture of one of the other airplanes flying over the mountains. Actually, I think my husband took these pictures, I'll be honest. These are the winter shots. So these are Greg's. And there it is again. It's just such a frozen landscape and so beautiful. Another shot there. Another shot. This is Mount Logan, if I'm not mistaken. And another shot of it there. Sometimes in the winter, they will land on a glacier near Mount Logan and let you get off and walk around. But unfortunately, when we traveled, the weather wasn't conducive to landing. You know, it just depends on, you know, what the day is like, whether it's safe to land or not. And it wasn't when we traveled. So it would have been nice to set foot in, you know, on the mountain, but we couldn't. Oh, another thing that we did while we were there is we went dog sledding. You may or may not have heard of the Yukon Quest. It's a 1,000-mile dog sled race that they claim is the most difficult race in the world. Anyways, the Yukon Quest had just taken off a few days before we left, you know, for our trip. But there are dog sled companies that will allow you to drive your own dog sled right along the Yukon Quest route. So we did that, and I don't know, that's me right in the front there of that picture. And I don't know if you can tell how red my face is, but it's cold. That's one downside to winter, is it is a touch cold, but beautiful nonetheless. And they do give you the coats and the mitts and everything that you need to stay warm while you're dog sledding. And it's kind of cool to feel like you're, you know, in the call of the wild. You know, the Jack London, all the descriptions said, drive your own dog sled. I loved it. That's me again with red face. That's another guy that was driving, and girl that we know, driving their sleds. I believe she is the weather girl on the Weather Network, just saying. And I just love these pictures of the dogs close up that Greg took. Look at how happy he looks. You know, you'd think that they might not want to pull the sled, but sled dogs love to run. Okay, this is a before shot. And there he is after. Look at how happy he is, like such a big smile before and after. Just thrilled to be there, thrilled to run. Oh, another thing that we did on our winter trip, there were 2 accommodations. This is not my picture, nor is it Greg's, and I'll explain why it's not, besides the fact that it's not very good. What happened was we spent a couple of nights in what's called an Aurora Glass Chalet. You may have heard of these. You know, it's where you stay in there and you're surrounded by windows. And if the northern lights are just right, you can lay in bed and just watch the show, which, you know, you pay a lot of money for these things, but darn it, the northern lights were not just right when we were there. So we didn't see any northern lights. So I just wanted to post a picture of what it could be like if you stayed in there when the northern lights were putting on their show. Yeah, we stayed awake a lot that night too. We didn't even sleep very well because we kept waiting to see if the northern lights would come out, but they didn't really when we were there. But it was kind of neat just laying in bed and watching the stars. Quite like that. Here's another accommodation that I thought was interesting that we stayed in. We stayed at Mount Logan Lodge, and they have a main lodge, and they have what's called a trapper's cabin. And they asked if would we be interested in staying in the trapper's cabin because it's a little bit away from the lodge and there might be a better chance that we could see the northern lights. We really wanted to see the northern lights. And so we decided to do it. I must say, there is no electricity in this cabin, and there's no running water. They have set it up with a really comfortable bed, but yeah, in the middle of the night, you know, sure enough, I had to go to the bathroom, and there is no way there's an outhouse right behind this. I should have taken a picture of that. Anyway, so poor Greg, he did not get to sleep because I did not want to go out in the dark by myself to that outhouse. So both of us went. Anyways, yeah, kind of interesting though, staying in a historic trapper's cabin. I thought it was interesting, but if it's not really your thing and you want a flush toilet, I must say Mount Logan Lodge, the main lodge rooms were really nice. And you know, near that area, you're right on the border of Kluane National Park, so good chance that you can see the northern lights from there. Unfortunately, once again, we did not see the northern lights the night that we stayed in the Mount Logan Lodge cabin. One thing that did happen though is at the Mount Logan Lodge, they bring in James Allen for evening storytelling. Now James, he has his own tourism operation. It's called Shakatan Adventures. And James is a former chief of his nation, and he's fascinating to listen to. I love the storytelling that took place at the lodge. It was really interesting. And the next day we went out with James and he taught us how to do some traditional ice fishing the way he did it when he was a young boy. So there's my husband Greg standing over the hole. He's holding this little wooden contraption that to ice fish. I have to look down at the hole. And you'll note that I have not included, I'll go back to that. I have not included any pictures of fish because, yes, we didn't catch any. But people do catch fish there all the time, just didn't happen for us. That's the way it is sometimes when you go fishing. But it was interesting spending time with James Allen and listening to his stories. I highly recommend it. This is another picture of him. One of the things that we did is we went on snowmobiles and we followed James along his trap line. It's the trap line that his family has used for centuries. And these are traditional traps that he showed us how they worked, how they built them from scratch, you know, using wood and different things. So it was interesting to follow him around. And then when we finished that, we went to a place called Christmas Bay, Yukon, and James has some yurts set up there, and they served us a traditional dinner. So we had some, I can't remember if it was like a bison stew or something like that, and just sat there in the sun at the top of the bay. It's a beautiful spot. Loved it. Another thing I love about winter is this. It's just so beautiful when the frost is on all of the trees and the vegetation. It's a gorgeous time to visit the Yukon. But the number one thing we wanted to do in the Yukon was to see the Northern Lights. And as I mentioned, when we first got in, we stayed in the Aurora cabin and nothing happened there. We stayed in the trapper's cabin trying to see the Northern Lights, no Northern Lights. On our last night before we were leaving, it finally happened. So we stayed our last couple of nights in Whitehorse, Yukon, and they have tours that will take you out to this spot where there's no light pollution, and they have yurts and teepees set up where you can keep warm while you're waiting. And at about, I think it was about 1 in the morning, the Northern Lights came out, and they were glorious. This is a picture Greg took of me looking at the Northern Lights. This is a picture of the teepees that they have set up. So you can go inside and warm up, and it's a big bonus to have that because it gets quite cold at 1 in the morning out in the Yukon. And we just watched them dance across the sky. I mean, you see Northern Lights in central Alberta. I have seen them, but I've never seen them like this. They do come through on a camera lens when you've got a slow shutter speed. They're brighter in these photographs, but than what they are to the eye. But even to the eye, the show was amazing. There's a picture I took of Craig standing in front of the teepees. And then there's guides there. So we asked one of them to take a picture of us, you know, and it just varies in brightness and it moves. Sometimes it's green, sometimes you'll see hints of purple. And if you're really lucky, you might see red. A red aurora is very rare, but it happens. So I thought I'd talk about a few things regarding visiting the Yukon. So at the moment, and this is because of COVID, all residents of Canada who do not live in the Yukon, British Columbia, the Northwest Territories, or Nunavut must self-isolate on arrival for 14 days. So you can go there, but you're going to have to isolate for 14 days. That said, I was talking to someone from Yukon Tourism recently, and she thought that it was going to be opening to Alberta soon. We're probably going to be the next province that it opens up to. They've opened up to British Columbia recently. So I think there's a good chance that Alberta is going to be next on the list, and then we'll be able to travel there without having to do a 14-day quarantine on arrival. If you have the choice of which airline to fly, I highly recommend Air North. Pre-COVID, they had direct flights from Edmonton to Whitehorse, Yukon that were direct. Or you could take Air Canada and make at least 2 stops on your way there. So besides being the only direct flight it wasn't direct out of Calgary, by the way. They only had direct service out of Edmonton. But the other thing I love about Air North is it hails to a bygone era. They do not charge for luggage. They feed you a meal, and before the flight is over, they give you hot cookies. It's just if I had the choice between Air North and any other airline, I'd fly Air North. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I recommend visiting in both seasons if possible, because I think both seasons have their beauty. I did see the Northern Lights when I visited in August, but the Northern Lights that I saw when I visited in January and February were so much brighter. So that was great. So here's a picture of the book, and I think they're going to be drawing for this. If you have questions that we don't answer today in this presentation, my blog is, my husband and I have a blog. It's called wanderwoman.ca. And if you go on there, there's an email contact. You can just email me and ask me any questions that you like. Social media handles for me are, you can also contact me that way, are at www.travelmag. That's my social media. But just wanted to open it up to any questions that you might have.
So I'm just going to join you, Debbie. That was really interesting. Thank you very much. As I expected, your pictures were great and your stories too. I do want to talk about our skill testing question though, so people will know what to let us know the answers to. So I think what we chose is, what year was gold discovered in the Klondike? So that was definitely in the presentation. I heard it. So anybody that was listening, you can enter in the comments section, or you can send me an email before next Wednesday at 5 o'clock and we'll do a draw. So we have had some questions. Would you go back again? You've been twice. Would you go another time?
I would. I would love to go back again. I would go back in either season. I thought it's just so beautiful. It's kind of one of those places that are, I don't know, it sounds cliche, but larger than life. You know, it's I can see why people went there and never came back. They stayed up there. It's a beautiful part of our country. I love it.
Another question is, where can we buy your book?
The book is for sale in Chapter stores and on Amazon. I believe it's in some other bookshops around town. And so yeah, but Chapters and Amazon, you can get it either online or right in the store, in the Chapters Indigo store.
Great. Will Dawson City, will the derelict buildings ever be rebuilt, do you think?
I don't know, some of them have been restored, but some of them, remember that tilty building that I don't know if you saw the ones that were kind of tilting in. I think they've become such landmarks just as they are that people, I doubt they'll fix that one up. You know,
maybe too late for that one too.
Yeah, yeah, who knows what they'd have to do to fix that.
So, and we've had some viewers who said they did join the Sourdough Cocktail Club.
Yeah, and I'm probably just a big chicken that I didn't, but I looked at it and thought, no. But there's a lot of people, like I said, over 100,000 people have joined the Sourdough Cocktail Club. It's a thing, people line up for it, and it's quite a formal thing. There's, you know, a guy that sits at a table and greets you, and you write down your name. You can tell I watched other people do it.
You needed a few more drinks yourself first, maybe is the problem, right?
maybe that was the problem.
But you said people they wanted to donate their toes too, like.
Yeah, this is a big thing, the donation of the toes. That one guy, I understand, froze his toes off, you know, and they had to be amputated, and so he wanted those toes. He's, I think, the only living donor. Other people have specified that when they die, they want their toes donated to this cause. So it's actually a thing.
Okay. And so do you buy souvenirs when you travel at all?
Not usually. I'm not big on souvenirs, although I will say this little necklace here, I did get it in Whitehorse. Just a sec, I had looked up the name of her. Her name is Shelley McDonald, and she does some really great silver work. And when Kate Middleton was there with Prince William, she purchased one of their necklaces. So I like to think that Kate and I may have the same necklace. You know, it's
Okay.
possible. I wear mine a lot. But no, I did buy that. There's a really good, you know what, there's a fantastic shoe store in Whitehorse. And actually the shoes I'm wearing right now, I bought in that shoe store. They have really interesting, really nice, high quality footwear there at a not a bad price considering it's Whitehorse in the far north. And the other thing that I often bring back from trips, and you might think this is weird, but in my backyard, I have something called Debbie's International Rock Garden. And so if I'm somewhere, not in a national park, obviously, but somewhere else, and I see a really pretty rock that I like, I will pick it up and I will take it and put it in the International Rock Garden in my backyard. So that's my classic souvenir. On another note, oh, do we have time for a story relating to the rocks?
Sure.
Okay. One time I was in Greenland on this, I was on a boat trip, a sailing trip from Greenland to through the Northwest Passage with my husband. Anyways, I found some really great rocks, and some of them were really big. I had them in my pockets, you know, and then we boarded onto these Zodiac boats to head back to the ship, and there were icebergs all around us. And our Zodiac driver said, "Do you want to go look at the icebergs?" And we said, "Sure." So, you know, to get really close to them. So he was going really, really close to the icebergs. And I remember I said to him, have you ever been really close to one of these when it calves? And he said, "No, it hasn't happened." Well, not just like, I don't know, 5, 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, after I asked that question, the iceberg that was right beside us caved off, a massive chunk of it. And he put the boat, we were riding on a tidal wave, just, you know, riding this tidal wave where we're almost swamped, we were almost tipped right over. And I was photographing this the whole time, videoing the thing. And the one thought I had in my head is, she would have lived if not for the rocks in her pockets. Because you know, I've got rocks in my pockets, and I'm thinking, what if this life jacket doesn't hold me up with these stupid rocks I've collected? Anyways, that's my rock collecting story. Sorry.
That's a good one. So did you kayak or canoe anywhere, or
no, not on the I would have loved to. Just one sec, Greg said something. What? Oh yeah, but not in the Yukon. Yeah, I mean, I've kayaked and canoed in other places, but not on the Yukon trips. I just rode the paddle wheeler down the river and saw Caveman Bill's house.
Okay. Well, that is all great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, couldn't have had a better person to get us started for doing our online version. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.